Well, as we take a look at spring planting season, getting ready to start across a wide area of the country here in the next couple of weeks ahead, we hope at least. We are looking at the availability of fertilizer, pricing, and more ahead of this planting season. Joining us now, Todd Diesel. He's the product manager for UAN and ammonia at CHS, and we appreciate his time here on the program today. Todd, good to catch up with you, sir. I hope you're doing well.
Thank you, Jesse. Pleasure to be here.
Well, let's dive right in, Todd. And first off, I think for our farmers across the countryside, there's been a lot of talk here in the last year plus about the price of fertilizer, the cost of our inputs. Let's just start there as we dive in. As you look at the landscape, I know we've seen some pricing come down here in recent weeks. How do things look for some of those key fertilizers that are out there that we need to be thinking about for spring planting season if we haven't done fall application?
Jesse, I think the place to start here is to really notice what drove the values up last summer and fall. And a couple of things that come to mind are we had the war in Ukraine, which really limited the amount of global product that was making it to the market. Then we had natural gas costs in Europe that just skyrocketed. At one point, we had about 70% of the European nitrogen plants that were totally offline, and they account for about 10% of global production. So that's quite a bit of production capacity lost. And then what this led to was demand was basically outstripping the supply. So where are we at today? What has happened since that time period? The market is pretty efficient. It's had time to adjust. We've kind of overcome some of that limited product coming out of the Ukraine and Russian market. We also had Europe, which just experienced a very warm winter season, never really stressed their natural gas costs. So from that standpoint, we've seen it come down as well, and some of those plants are back operating. So as we head into spring season, nitrogen values are less than what they were. This would be anhydrous UAN nitrogen solution, as well as granular urea. All three are lower. Phosphates have come off of their highs, but still relatively, we might say, in that range. And of course, the potash supply around the world is very plentiful. Therefore, it's come down as well.
How about as we look at transportation? I know we had issues there as well, especially towards the end of last year with low water levels on the Mississippi River and a lot of our inland waterway system. As we look at transportation, I know we've seen river levels come back up. Still some questions about some rail service here and there, trucks here and there. What's the latest on the transportation side? Will we be able to get the product that we need this spring?
Well, the key to getting it is to start planning today. That's really what we need to be discussing. But where we are, the river system's really the tale of two ends or extremes. We had, as you mentioned, the very low water supplies last fall. A lot of terminals couldn't even get to the dock. So product was not available. Now we're heading into a situation where it looks like we could end up having severe flooding in some areas if this snowpack in the north would happen to melt too quickly. So two extremes there. We've seen limited tow sizes moving up the river now, just because it's hard to push against the extreme current that we're getting. And if we switch over to the rail side, rail has been very suspect over the last several years, and some rail lines are handling it better than others. But as we look at the western, northern Corn Belt, the UP rail line is a real challenge right now. BN seems to be handling traffic a little bit better. And then, of course, we don't have to go too far to realize we have a trucker shortage out in the country. So just-in-time fertilizer deliveries, even from local distribution facilities, could be delayed as well. So that's where I go back to the best game plan today is to have a plan. Have a plan, let somebody know what you're going to be needing.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that because you are 100% right. Having a plan in place and probably in some cases, maybe having a plan B and a plan C and a plan D as well, just in case. But talking to your retailer, working with folks to make sure that they have the product that you need when you're going to need it. I have to think that is just so crucial, Todd.
Well, it is. And I think if you talk to most growers this time of year, they're getting that spring fever. but that generally means they think about their equipment and the operations side of the business. And so they're doing things like maintenance that should have been done maybe last fall. They're changing oil, they're making sure everything's ready to go. Well, the second part of that is making sure that we have a plan and communicated that plan to our local agronomist or the local cooperative out there in the country, because we still have time in many cases to get product where it needs to be. But if we look at this supply chain, and Jesse, one thing that I should point out is last summer and fall, when we had high global values, we actually exported more nitrogen units than we typically would that time of year. And today we've not made up those nitrogen units, whether it's in the form of anhydrous ammonia, nitrogen solution, and or urea. We are still behind on those imports. Some of those supply chains are upwards of 70 and 80 days long. So if we're to add an extra vessel of urea today from the Arab Gulf region and try to get it into the northern plains, for instance, it's probably a 75 to 80 day trip. And if we look at the calendar, we really don't have 75 to 80 days until this product's going to be needed. So that's why I stress the fact today that a plan that is communicated to their local agronomist or local supply point is very, very critical.
Well, Todd, great thoughts, great advice. Before we let you go, any other final thoughts? Anything else you want to reiterate for our farmer listeners out there as they are getting ready for spring planting season?
I think it's best summed up maybe in three words, and that is have the plan, communicate the plan, and then execute it once the weather allows us to do that. We look forward to this spring season. We think it's going to be very positive. Growers should be in a pretty good shape with values where they are today, but just make sure they get that plan to somebody that has their backside.
Well, of course, they can reach out to their local CHS cooperative location if they need help with anything. And we appreciate the time with that. Todd Diesel, he is the product manager for UAN and ammonia at CHS. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We hope to talk to you again real soon.